everyone! Welcome back to Quiet Calm Books, a quiet, safe space to talk about books. My name is Peyton and I am super excited to film this video today. It's one that I've wanted to do for a while and it's one that I've seen a lot of my other favorite booktubers do. This is going to be tier ranking all of the fantasy series that I have ever read. I have definitely not read as many as some people, but I have read quite a few. So here is the complete list of all of the fantasy series that I read. Currently this is just fantasy series, so I'm not counting standalone fantasy. I am counting both YA fantasy and adult fantasy. So we have probably like 30 something here, quite a few. I am still counting the series even if I only read like the first book in a series or the first two, even if I haven't completely finished the series. This is just going to be my rating based on what I've read so far. At this point, I'm pretty picky because I have read so many. I definitely gravitate towards urban fantasy, but I do read a lot of high fantasy as well, so we have a good mix of both of those in here. I guess we'll start out by kind of going through these tiers that I've created and talking about what they mean for me. So there's 6 different levels of tiers. There's God tier or S tier, Great tier, which for me is going to be like an A plus A. Good tier, which is like a B. Okay tier is a C. Not for me tier is a little bit different. I'm not necessarily going to say that that's like a D or an F. It's just a book that was personally not my taste. Maybe a lot of other people like it. Maybe it was okay in terms of the writing style and plot and characters and everything, but it just was not my vibe. So I have to rate it low because I don't like it. And then trash tier are books that have actively upset me, books that were either offensive or books that are just make me seethe with hatred. So that is kind of what all of those are. Again, God tier, I'm gonna try to use sparingly because that is like S tier, and those are books that I'm absolutely obsessed with, books that I would literally tattoo on my body. I feel like I definitely give out 4 and 5 stars to books fairly easily, even though I am picky, just because as a writer myself, not a published writer or anything, but someone who does write creatively, I understand how much time and effort goes into not only writing a book, but going through the formal publication process and doing that. I was actually going to go into the publishing industry for a while. I took a lot of classes on it in school and studied it for a long time. So I'm very familiar with how much effort that takes. So if I love a book, I am definitely going to be tempted to put it in God tier because I'm going to be like, oh, the author put so much effort into this and I loved it and it's a beautiful piece of literature. God tier, would tattoo it on my body. However, some of the books that I love still have some problems. They might have some issues in terms of characters or plot or writing style. So that's all my tiers. I know people tier these differently and rank these differently, but just know that I like to give 4 or 5 stars. So most of these are probably going to end up in good, great, or God. And then books that were kind of meh are going to be in okay or not for me. And then books that are actively offensive and I do not think should be read by anybody, that's gonna go in trash tier. So those will probably also be few and far between. Let's get started. I do have Goodreads pulled up with me because I don't read that many books per year. So a lot of these fantasy series were series that I read all the way back in high school. So I don't necessarily remember the plot or summary of every single one of these, and some of them may be more niche. So I might give like a quick little summary. Okay, so this first book is called Obsidian. This is the first book in the Lux series by Jennifer L. Armentrout. From what I remember, I hated this book. This is definitely YA fantasy. There are some books, some YA fantasy books especially, that are like really incredible, like Leigh Bardugo, etc., that are very well written, very mature. And then there are books that just feel like the author was trying to write in a high schooler's voice, even though he or she is not a high schooler. And that is very much what Obsidian felt like to me. This is a book from, I'm looking at the summary right now, about a girl who moves to West Virginia right before her senior year, and she's pissed about it apparently, and then she meets her hot neighbor who turns out to be an alien. Yeah, I don't know why I expected a lot going into this book. It has very high ratings. I did not love it at all. It was just too much. It was just too much. I'm not gonna put it in trash tier. It wasn't actively offensive, but I am gonna put it in the not for me tier. I'm good, thanks. Okay, so next up we have a book series from one of my favorite authors, A.C. Gaughan. As far as I know, this is her most recent series that she's written. This is called The Elemente, and this consists of Reign the Earth, which is the first book, and then Imprison the Sky. I'm not sure if there was a third book released. I only ever read Reign the Earth. So I'm just gonna give a quick summary for those who haven't read it. Shallya is a proud daughter of the desert, but after years of devastating war with the adjoining kingdom, her people are desperate for peace. Willing to trade her freedom to ensure the safety of her family, Shallya becomes queen of the Bonelands. But she soon learns that her husband, Calix, is motivated only by his desire to exterminate the Elemente, mystical people who can control earth, wind, air, and fire. Even more unsettling are Shallya's feelings for her husband's brother, which unleash a power over the earth she never knew she possessed, a power that could get her killed. As rumors of a rebellion against Calix spread, Shallya must choose between the last chance for peace and her own future as an Elemente. This one I liked. I did rate it 4 stars on Goodreads. There's definitely a lot of like royal intrigue, and then obviously elemental magic, which if you know me, I really love any books that involve earth, fire, wind, water powers. I did find the romance between Shallya and Calix interesting, kind of enemies to lovers. I did never read the second book, so it didn't stick with me too much. Like I wasn't awestruck by it. I'm gonna put it in the good tier. I'm gonna say good vibes, but not show-stopping. Okay, next up we have the Twilight Saga by Stephenie Meyer. Definitely don't have to look up the summary for this one. I'm sure everybody knows Twilight, but if for some reason you're living under a rock, that consists of Twilight, New Moon, Eclipse, and Breaking Dawn. I have read the 3 first books, and then I think half of Breaking Dawn I read, but obviously I've seen all the movies because who hasn't? I really like this. I like this series. I like Twilight. It definitely isn't on par with some of these other books in terms of writing style and like world building, but I like the vibes. I like Forks as a setting. I like werewolves. I like vampires. I'm gonna stop trying to defend myself, and I'm gonna say that this one's gonna go in good tier, because I know in my head some of the books I'm gonna put in great tier, and it's definitely not on that level. Definitely not on a god tier level, because you know some of the writing is definitely not on par with these other books, but we'll put it in good tier. Okay, so next up we have the Vicious series by V.E. Schwab. Actually, I don't think it's called the Vicious series, it's called the Villains series. So that consists of Vicious and Vengeful. I'm right away going to put this one in God tier. I absolutely love these books. I want to fall into this world again and again. I would tattoo symbols from this book on my body. Like, I absolutely love it. I love V.E. Schwab. She's an incredible author. But basically, if you really like Marvel, if you like superheroes, this is like a very dark, gritty and twisted version of heroes and villains and what they are, and kind of questioning the definition of what makes a hero and what makes a villain, like what morals are important for each of those. And especially brings up questions about like heroes are willing to sacrifice anything and anyone to save the world, and to do what they think is right for the world. And they might not always be correct in terms of what they think is right for the world. So that's very interesting. And the powers in these books, I can't even explain it. It's just so believable. I remember when I first read Vicious, the people who have powers in these books are called extraordinaries, or EOs. The way that V.E. Schwab explains the science behind EOs, I was literally Googling who are extraordinaries? Like, do they exist? Could they exist? Because it was so believable, and the world just really sucked me in. Let me read the synopsis for you really quick. Victor and Eli started out as college roommates, brilliant, arrogant, lonely boys who recognized the same sharpness and ambition in each other. In their senior year, a shared research interest in adrenaline, near-death experiences, and seemingly supernatural events reveals an intriguing possibility that under the right conditions, someone could develop extraordinary abilities. But when their thesis moves from the academic to the experimental, things go horribly wrong. 10 years later, Victor breaks out of prison, determined to catch up to his old friend, now foe, aided by a young girl whose reserved nature obscures a stunning ability. Meanwhile, Eli is on a mission to eradicate every other superpowered person that he can find, aside from his sidekick, an enigmatic woman with an unbreakable will. Armed with terrible power on both sides, driven by the memory of betrayal and loss, the arch-nemesis have set a course for revenge. But who will be left alive at the end? And the ending was absolutely explosive, definitely worthy of like a blockbuster film or a Marvel movie. It should definitely be made into one. Yeah, absolutely love Vicious, love V.E. Schwab. So next up we have a Leigh Bardugo series. So the Alex Stern series by Leigh Bardugo is Ninth House and Hellbent. I just recently finished Hellbent. I gave that one, I think, 4 stars, and then 5 stars for the first book. This is a series that is set in Yale, which Leigh Bardugo went to Yale. She's an alum from there, and it's about the secret societies at Yale and basically the kind of supernatural and occult things that they get up to there. I do really like this series. I am going to not put it in God tier for sure because it's not as good as some of Leigh Bardugo's other series in my opinion. I'll put it in great tier. I would say that I would read it again, definitely the first book. Okay, so next up we have another A.C. Gaughan series. This is the Scarlet series. This consists of 3 books, Scarlet, Lady Thief, and Lionheart. This is a really good series, much better than her newer series in my opinion. This is a retelling of Robin Hood in which Will Scarlet is a girl who cross-dresses in order to survive in the harsh world that she lives in. There's also a lot of romance between Scar, as she's called, and Robin, which I absolutely love. I wasn't even like the hugest fan of Robin Hood as a kid, but this is just such a good retelling. I love it. I'm gonna put this one in great tier. Okay, so next up we have Maggie Stiefvater, I think her name is pronounced, and her book The Raven Boys, which is part of the Raven Cycle series. It really felt more like a supernatural thriller than fantasy, and maybe that is how it's classified, I'm not sure. But from what I remember, it was a little bit like spiritual. There was something about like ley lines and like spirituality and like the occult, and it just didn't really resonate with me personally. I only gave it 2 stars. I think I did get all the way through the first book actually. But I don't have anything against it. Like the writing was fine, the characters were fine. So I'm gonna put this one in not for me tier. Next up, we have V.E. Schwab's Shades of Magic series. Big surprise, this one's gonna go in God tier. I love V.E. Schwab. That's all there is to know. So the Shades of Magic series is a darker shade of magic, a gathering of shadows, and a conjuring of light. So far I've read the first 2 books, absolutely love them both. I am actually going to read the summary for this one really quick because I know that I can't do it justice if I try to explain. I'm a reader and a writer, guys. I'm not a summary maker. So Kell is one of the last Antari magicians with a rare coveted ability to travel between parallel Londons, red, grey, white, and once upon a time, black. Kell was raised in Arnis, Red London, and officially serves the Moresh Empire as an ambassador, traveling between the frequent bloody regime changes in White London and the court of George III in the dullest of Londons, the one without any magic left to see. Unofficially, Kell is a smuggler, servicing people willing to pay for even the smallest glimpses of a world they'll never see. It's a defiant hobby with dangerous consequences, which Kell is now seeing firsthand. After an exchange goes awry, Kell escapes to Grey London and runs into Delilah Bard, a cut purse with lofty aspirations. She first robs him, then saves him from a deadly enemy, and finally forces Kell to spirit her to another world for a proper adventure. I absolutely love this series. I love the world building of the different Londons. Especially White London. That one is so like creepy and cold and brutal and well done. But Red London as well is so vivid and immersive. I just love all the different Londons, how distinct they are, and then also Kel and Lila are definitely one of my favorite couples. And I also love that their personalities are so different. Like Kel is very much a reluctant wanderer and adventurer, and he's kind of got why does this always happen to me vibes, whereas Lila is always actively seeking out danger, which I really love. So love that series, definitely recommend. Next we have The Vampire Chronicles by Anne Rice. I have only read the first book, which is Interview with the Vampire. I'm sure everybody knows this one. If you haven't read the book, you've seen the movie. This is an excellent story, and I'm sure other people have said it better than me, but I really love what I've read of Anne Rice so far. I love her interpretation of vampires. I love the almost metaphorical meaning that they hold for her. Yeah, I really love this one. I don't know that I would put it in God tier, just because I don't know if I would tattoo it on my body type vibes, but I'm gonna put it in great tier. Hopefully that's not controversial. It may be. So next up we have the Between Earth and Sky series by Rebecca Rowan Horace. This one's gonna go in God tier, for sure. This is a new favorite of mine. Currently there's only 2 books, Black Sun and Fevered Star. I'm currently in the middle of Fevered Star. I just absolutely love the world building in this one. It's really incredible. I feel like I am actually gonna read out the summaries for all of the God tier books, just because they deserve to be done justice and to be explained well, so that you know why they're my favorites and you will want to read them. And this one is inspired by the civilizations of the pre-Columbian Americas, which is very unique and different from the usual European-inspired fantasy worlds that we see. And it's just so immersive and magical. Lots of political intrigue, like unique types of magic. I really love it. And Rebecca Rowan Horace is just such a great storyteller. Like, I'm just so entertained no matter what is happening to her characters. Like, they could literally be eating dinner together, and I'm just so entertained by the way she describes everything. So let me read the summary for you. In the holy city of Tova, the winter solstice is usually a time for celebration and renewal, but this year it coincides with a solar eclipse, a rare celestial event prescribed by the sun priest as an unbalancing of the world. Meanwhile, a ship launches from a distant city bound for Tova and is set to arrive on the solstice. The captain of the ship, Sheila, hopefully I'm pronouncing her name right, is a disgraced teak whose song can calm the waters around her as easily as it can warp a man's mind. Her ship carries 1 passenger. Described as harmless, the passenger, Serapio, is a young man, blind, scarred, and cloaked in destiny. As Sheila well knows, when a man is described as harmless, he usually ends up being a villain. This is just such an amazing series. I absolutely love all the characters. Sheila and Serapio are definitely my favorites, but we do follow a couple other point of view characters as well, who I also love, like Narampa. It's incredible. There's also really good LGBT representation in this series. I can't say enough good things about it. If you love magic, if you love being told stories about ancient magic and old gods and like the ancient times, this is definitely for you. And I also feel like it's got a really good pace and the language is easy to understand. I know sometimes with really heavy high fantasy stories, you can get lost, especially in the first book, but she just does such a great job of really holding your hand and guiding you into the world. So definitely recommend this one. Okay, I really need to stop talking so much. What is up next? Okay, so we have Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. This one's gonna go right in God tier. Look at me just putting everything in God tier exactly like I said I wouldn't. I absolutely love this series. It's one of my favorite series. If the books are too long for you and you don't want to read, there's a show on Netflix that you can watch, but I definitely recommend the books. That's Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom are the 2 books currently in the series. It's absolutely amazing. I love the character development. Every single one of these characters is so memorable to me, like Kaz, Inej, Matthias, Nina, Wylan, Jesper, every single one. I just love all 6 of the point of view characters so much. I really like stories that are character driven. So that's definitely the priority for me over a really good plot, is characters that I can really get attached to. So this series is set in her Grishaverse, which was originally introduced in Shadow and Bone, and it's also set in Ketterdam, which is a city in Kerch, one of the countries in the Grishaverse. Ketterdam, a bustling hub of international trade where anything can be had for the right price, and no one knows that better than criminal prodigy Kaz Brecker. Kaz is offered a chance at a deadly heist that can make him rich beyond his wildest dreams, but he can't pull it off alone. A convict with a thirst for revenge, a sharpshooter who can't walk away from a wager, a runaway with a privileged past, a spy known as the Wraith, a heartrender using her magic to survive the slums, a thief with a gift for unlikely escapes. 6 dangerous outcasts, 1 impossible heist. This series is iconic. If you haven't read it, what are you doing? It's just so good. So next up, we have the Mortal Instruments series by Cassandra Clare. Now, I definitely haven't talked too much about Cassandra Clare on my channel. I used to read a lot of her when I was in high school. I know she's very controversial. She's done a lot of author no-nos, including plagiarizing work. Yeah, I did like this series a lot. It's set in New York. It's very urban, very gritty. If you don't know, follows a cast of characters who are shadow hunters, basically like monster hunters in New York. It's the world building is definitely great. I love Clary and Jace for sure, but yeah, it did have a lot of problems. I'm gonna put it in great tier, mostly because it's nostalgic. It's definitely not God tier for me though. Okay, next we have Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom Riggs. So for my ratings, I gave the first book 3 stars, the second book 2 stars, and that is all I've read of it so far. Yeah, I'm gonna say that this one's gonna be good tier. It was a solid book series. I liked it. It's basically about children with supernatural abilities who live in this home together. I feel like it's American Horror Story vibes, kind of, which I haven't seen, but if you like that, you'll probably like this. Ransom Riggs actually was inspired to write this series after he found a collection of old photographs, and those photographs are incorporated throughout the book, and he interprets them and like makes up stories for each of them, which is really interesting. Okay, next we have the Practical Magic series by Alice Hoffman. I actually have not read Practical Magic. I've only read Rules of Magic, which is the prequel. This one is good. Again, not a standout to me. I did rate Rules of Magic 5 stars. I would probably read it again. But still, I can't in good conscience put it in great tier because the characters did not stick out that much to me. This one's also set in New York City. I live there, so I do read a lot of books set in New York City. I do feel like it leaned a little bit more heavily into the like romance side. If you'd pulled the magic out of it, it could have been just a contemporary novel about romance and coming of age in the city. So I'm gonna put that one in good tier. Okay, this one is gonna be controversial, I know it. This is the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. I have only read the first book. I really didn't like this one. I don't like Sarah J. Maas. It was an interesting read. I just did not resonate with the main character in this one. I didn't understand a lot of her motivations. The romance just felt really flat to me. So I'm gonna have to put it in the not for me tier. It has been a while since I've read it. Maybe I would give it another go, but I just think I've given Sarah J. Maas too many chances and she's just not for me. So next we have the Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer. The first book is Cinder, which is a Cinderella retelling that is set in a very cyberpunk world, in which Cinderella is a cyborg. And it's cool. It has a lot of royal intrigue, and then of course if you like the cyberpunk or steampunk type vibes, yeah, then this one might be for you. I didn't rate it, and honestly, I don't remember it. It's been so long since it came out, but I'm gonna put it in the okay tier. Let's see. Next, we have our first Derek Landy series, which, if you are new to my channel, I have a complicated relationship with Derek Landy, but I'm obsessed with his series, Skullduggery Pleasant, and there's a whole video on it on my channel that I made a few years back. So you should definitely watch that if you haven't heard of it, or if you're from America, and because you probably haven't heard of it if you're from America. I've only met like 1 or 2 people who are and who have read it, because it is an Irish series, so it is very good. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about Demon Road. Demon Road is also very good. It's definitely interesting. It's about a girl who turns into a demon. I feel like I'm not doing the description justice, so I'm gonna read it to you. Killer cars, vampires, undead serial killers, they're all here. And the demons, well, that's where Amber comes in. 16 years old, smart and spirited, she's just a normal American teenager until the lies are torn away and the demons reveal themselves. Forced to go on the run, she hurtles from one threat to another, revealing a tapestry of terror woven into the very fabric of her life. Her only chance rests with her fellow travelers who are not at all what they appear to be. So as I said, this is about an American teenager, grew up her whole life not realizing she was a demon and then suddenly becomes one. That's not a huge spoiler. It happens in the first few pages. It's literally the cover, so don't worry. If you like older type fantasy where there's lots of like backroads adventures, honestly, this felt a little bit more like a paranormal thriller in terms of the setting and the vibes than like actual fantasy, which is very different from Skullduggery or other things that Derek Landy has written. It was good. Let's see what I rated it. Oh, I did rate it 5 stars. Okay, I'm gonna put it in the great tier. You know what? I'm not. I'm gonna put it in the good tier. Yeah, I don't know. There's just something about it that was not as good as Skullduggery, and that's kind of what I'm basing it off of, and I know a lot of people have said the same. Also, it was just very weird to read a book series from an Irish writer who's writing about the life of an American teenager, because he obviously didn't grow up here, and so some of the references and things don't hit the same. I don't read a lot of like old thrillers, sci-fi and fantasy that takes place on like the backroads of America. I know that like Neil Gaiman writes a lot of that sort of stuff. I haven't read much of his work, so it was definitely interesting. We have Morpheus Road by DJ McHale. This is a very random book series that I actually won in a free books basket. This one I'm gonna put in okay tier. It was really not memorable to me. There was a bit of a cool premise wherein the main character is an artist and he draws a lot of really creepy things in his sketchbook, and then they come to life and start hunting him down, which is creepy. And just if it was better written, if the characters were better developed, it would have been a great premise, but it wasn't there for me. Next we have the Folk of the Air series by Holly Black. This consists of The Cruel Prince, The Wicked King, and The Queen of Nothing, and I believe there's a couple other books that have come out, but that's the main trilogy. I'm gonna put this in great tier. I'm gonna say 10 out of 10. I would read this again, but it's not God tier for me. I know this is a lot of people's favorite fantasy series, and the relationship between Jude and Cardan is very much enemies to lovers, which a lot of people like, and I really liked as well. I just don't read a lot of books with fae in them, and the ones that I have read just haven't resonated with me as well. I just feel like it's a bit of an overdone concept, so that's probably the only thing that brought it down from God tier for me, because otherwise the writing was great, the characters and their relationships were very intricate. Jude is probably one of my favorite protagonists of all time. She's just so ruthless and tough. Definitely recommend that series, really great. Next we have the Precious Stone series by Kirsten Geyer. I only read the first book, which was Ruby Red. This is an old series. I think there was some royal intrigue. I think it took place in like a palace and there was time travel. Honestly, this might have been one of the books that I picked up because the cover was cool, and because I like the premise of books based on like gemstones, because I think there's ruby and then the sequel is like emerald and sapphire, which I really liked. But yeah, it doesn't stick out to me, so we're gonna put it in the okay tier. Next we have American Gods by Neil Gaiman. This is the first Neil Gaiman book that I'm gonna rate. So basically it is based on gods from different tales, and they're also on the backroads of America. There's Greek gods, there's Roman gods, there's Egyptian gods, there's Norse gods. But the thing that was really weird to me about this book is that Neil Gaiman doesn't really explain to you what's going on or that these people are gods. And I guess maybe I just need to read up more on my mythology, but if you are introduced to a bunch of characters, and he did not use like the correct names for these gods either. Like he didn't say like this is Anubis, this is Loki. He gave them very strange names, so I had no idea who they were. And they had like this mission and they all talked in this very like mysterious, omniscient way. I just did not vibe with the characters. I also felt like the female representation was really not great. It almost wasn't there, and what wasn't great. I'm gonna put it in not for me tier. That's what it's gonna go. Where it's gonna go, I think I gave it 2 stars, So next we have the Magicians series by Lev Grossman. This is actually a book I had to read for school. It's also a TV series, if you've seen that. It was basically advertised as a dark academia series, a grittier version of Harry Potter, from what I remember. And it's basically, the premise is that the main character has this fantasy world that he really loves from one of his childhood books, and then it comes to life. He finds out that it is not anything that he imagined it would be. Everything was kind of depressing in this book, which for me, when I'm reading fantasy, I want to escape to another world that's different from this world. I do like when there's real world implications and themes, but just this one had too much of that and not enough of the magic for me. So I'm gonna put that in the not for me tier. Okay, so next we have the Odd Thomas series by Dean Koontz. This is very different from a lot of the other fantasy series that are on here. It's definitely more of a supernatural paranormal thriller than actual urban fantasy or high fantasy. There's more ghosts than anything else. The main character, Odd, is sort of like a psychic. He can see ghosts. This is a really good series. Honestly, I would love to reread it. I don't know that I would put it in God tier, just because after the first book, a few of the books in the middle of the series got slower. And there are like 8 books, so it was a bit of a lot to slug through, but definitely the first book is incredible. We're gonna put it in great tier, and I'm actually gonna read you the synopsis. He's Odd Thomas to be precise, genius fry cook at the Pico Mundo Grill, boyfriend to the gorgeous Stormy Llewellyn, and possibly the only person with a chance of stopping one of the worst crimes in the bloody history of murder. Something evil has come to the desert town that Odd and Stormy call home. It comes in the form of a mysterious man with a macabre appetite, a filing cabinet full of information on the world's worst killers, and strange hyena-like shadows following him wherever he goes. Odd is worried. He knows things, sees things about the living, the dead, and the soon-to-be-dead. Things that he has to act on. Now he's terrified for Stormy, himself, and Pico Mundo, because he knows that on Wednesday, August 15th, a savage, blood-soaked whirlwind of violence and murder will devastate the town. Yeah, so this one's definitely more crime thriller focused, with a little bit of paranormal thrown in with the ghosts that are following Odd and kind of his ability to predict people's deaths. I just really love this one, and for me it's all about the character development here. Odd is such a lovable character. He has such powerful, insightful wisdoms about the world. And this is definitely one of those books where you like actively miss the characters once you close the last page. Okay, so next up we have The Witcher by Andrzej Sapkowski, who's a Polish writer. I really had high expectations going into this book series and reading the first book, because I love the Witcher series on Netflix. I love the world building. I love the monster. I really liked Geralt as a character. I just really liked his demeanor, his sense of humor. I also really liked the character Yennefer. I liked seeing like this powerful female character who was willing to make sacrifices to get what she wanted. I read about half of The Last Wish, which is the first book in the Witcher series, and I was sorely disappointed. Geralt, his relationship with Yennefer is not similar. I actually found the depiction of Yennefer and some of the other female characters to be very sexist. Jaskier also does not exist in the book. I'm gonna put this one in trash tier. That's my first trash tier book. Next we have A Song of Ice and Fire, or A Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. If you watched one of my more recent unhaul videos, you saw that I got rid of this book. I just didn't like it. I'm sure everyone knows what Game of Thrones is about, so I'm not gonna go through the premise. Not enough magic. That is the number one thing for me as a fantasy reader. I need magic, and it's what makes fantasy interesting. And I do like my royal intrigue, but not that much. I'm not gonna put it in trash tier. It is well written. I'm gonna put it in the not for me tier. Next we have A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. And you guys already know how I feel about Sarah J. Maas. So many people love A Court of Thorns and Roses. I just didn't like the dynamic between Feyre and Tamlin, is the Fey couple. I just didn't like their dynamic. I know there's another character who comes up later, Rysand, and he has wings, which is cool, but the characters just really fell flat for me. Again, same as Throne of Glass, really didn't understand their motivations. Fae series, Fae stories are obviously just not for me, so we're gonna put ACOTAR in the not for me tier. Okay, next we have Every Day by David Levithan. This one is another one very different from the rest of the books on here. Technically it's fantasy, but it's really more contemporary. This is probably one of my favorite books of all time. I read this one in high school. It's about a spirit named A. They're a spiritual presence, and then they take over the bodies of other people who are around their same age, so all in high school. So he gets to live through the lives of so many different people, and then there's also a romance plot where they fall in love with a girl and they have to convince her that it's still them even though they're in all these different bodies. And I just found it really sweet and charming and insightful as well, and I love it. I'm gonna put it in great tier. Okay, we're getting to the last row, thank goodness, because I've been rambling on for so long. So next we have The Infernal Devices by Cassandra Clare, and that is Clockwork Angel, Clockwork Prince, and Clockwork Princess. I love this series. I know Cassandra Clare is controversial, but I think The Infernal Devices is the best of her work. I really love the love triangle in this one. I love Tessa, Will, and Jem. I am a Jem girl at heart. He is definitely my favorite character. So I'm gonna put this one in God tier, and I'm gonna read the summary of the first book for you, just in case you haven't read it. In a time when Shadowhunters are barely winning the fight against the forces of darkness, one battle will change the course of history forever. The year is 1878. Tessa Gray descends into London's dark supernatural underworld in search of her missing brother. She soon discovers that her only allies are the demon-slaying Shadowhunters, including Will and Jem, the mysterious boys she is attracted to. Soon they find themselves up against the Pandemonium Club, a secret organization of vampires, demons, warlocks, and humans. Equipped with a magical army of unstoppable clockwork creatures, the club is out to rule the British Empire, and only Tessa and her allies can stop them. Yeah, I absolutely love this world. The characters are really what does it for me. The Shadowhunter world is very cool. I do like the portrayal of vampires and demons and warlocks and how they're just trying to kind of live their own lives, but they're also being hunted by the Shadowhunters, and some of them are bad, but also some of them are not. I just really love the dynamic between the love triangle in this one, Jem and Tessa, for the win. They're my favorite. Definitely recommend this series if you haven't read it or heard of it. Next up, we have Skullduggery Pleasant by Derek Landy. This one, I love Skullduggery Pleasant. There are a lot of books in the Skullduggery Pleasant series, and you can watch my older video if you want more info on it specifically. But there are almost 20 books at this point, which is a lot of books featuring the same two characters. And it is tough, probably for any author to come up with new material for these same two characters in the same world. But he's managed to do it for quite a long time. It's a really incredible series. Again, it's a very character-driven series. I love Valkyrie and Skullduggery. They're two of my favorite characters of all time. This is also a book series that has elemental magic as well as other types of magic, like necromancy and shadow magic and that type of vibe. So if you really like elemental magic, there's a lot of that. The main character is a walking, talking skeleton, so it's definitely a more unique premise. It is equal parts fantasy and horror, I would say. There are definitely some very intense moments, and if you're younger or you're recommending this to someone who's in like middle school or even high school, I would be careful, because I know I was scarred as a middle school child by a lot of the horrific body horror scenes and insane things that happen in the series. But he does have some issues, I would say, in his later books in terms of plot and character development and just some general inconsistencies. I have a tattoo of it. Skullduggery and Valkyrie are always going to have a special place in my heart. I am going to put it in the great tier. Next up, we have Beastly by Alex Flynn. I actually don't know if this is a series. It must be, because I put it on here. It is. It's part of a series called the Kendra Chronicles. So Beastly is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. There's also a movie that came out about it a few years ago. Basically about a boy who, in the movie, he just has scars on his face, and so he looks sort of beastly, and he was cursed by a witch. And then he obviously meets his Belle, his romantic type interest, But in the book, he's actually more of a Beauty and the Beast type beast, wherein he has like an actual animal monster face. I do love a good fairy tale retelling, but the romance and the plot just didn't really stick out to me. So I'm gonna put Beastly in the okay tier. I'm gonna say it was lukewarm. I don't really remember much about it. So next we have the Witch Haven series. This is by Sasha Payton Smith. I know you shouldn't buy books based on their cover, but it's just so pretty and it's got this moon and stars on it and it's so sparkly. So this one is a fairly new release. I think the second book just came out either this year or last year. It's called The Witch Hunt. But the first book is The Witch Haven. This is a dark academia series. You follow your protagonist who works as a seamstress in a shop, and then she finds out that she has magical powers and she goes away to this magical school, which is not what it seems. There's also a very interesting romance with a dreamwalking character, which I did really like. I rated this one, I believe, 4 stars. Yes. I'm gonna say it's hard for me to put it in the great tier because I'm looking at the great tier and I have really great books in the great tier, like almost god tier books in the great tier. And I don't think The Witch Haven is on par with like Interview with the Vampire and Skulduggery Pleasant, so I'm gonna put it in the good tier. I've kind of skewed my own ratings a little bit, but it's okay. Okay, next we have the Shiver trilogy by Maggie Stiefvater. This is by the same author who wrote The Raven Cycle. This is a book that I read in high school. I never finished the rest of the series. I think there are 2 other books. This is basically a werewolf romance book, more like a shapeshifter wolf type romance. I really liked this one. It was sweet from what I remember. It was a cute high school romance. I would probably have to reread it. I'm gonna put it in the great tier and I'll just have to give it another read. If it's a good book, it's a good book, you know? And I did rate it 4 stars. Next we have the Legacy of Orisha series by Tomi Adeyemi. This book series was super popular in like 2018, 2019. Those books are Children of Blood and Bone and then Children of Virtue and Vengeance. This is a very good series. The world building is intricate and interesting. The magic systems are super cool. This is another elemental magic based book series. No surprise there, that's my favorite. Okay, so I'm gonna read the summary really quick for you. Let's see. Sorry if I butcher any of these names. Zeli Adebola remembers when the soil of Orisha hummed with magic. Burners ignited flames, tiders beckoned waves, and Zeli's Reaper Mother summoned forth souls. But everything changed the night magic disappeared. Under the orders of a ruthless king, Magi were killed, leaving Zeli without a mother and her people without hope. Now Zeli has one chance to bring back magic and strike against the monarchy. With the help of a rogue princess, Zeli must outwit and outrun the crown prince, who is hell-bent on eradicating magic for good. Danger lurks in Orisha, where snow leopards prowl and vengeful spirits wait in the waters. Yet the greatest danger may be Zeli herself as she struggles to control her powers and her growing feelings for an enemy. So there is enemies to lovers in this one as well. I don't know that the characters were as memorable as the world. I can definitely picture some of the settings, like the castle and like the desert and the forest and places that the characters were, more than I can picture the interactions between the characters themselves. I did rate the second book 3 stars and then 4 stars for the first book, so I'm gonna have to put it in good tier. Next we have Howl's Moving Castle, which I love Ghibli movies. My favorite Ghibli film is Spirited Away, but Howl's Moving Castle is definitely comes in at like a close second or third for my favorite. I think Princess Mononoke might actually be my second, and then probably Howl's Moving Castle. The book is definitely very different from the Ghibli film. I know the book is what inspired the Ghibli film. The premise is very much the same. I can read it to you, but I'm sure everybody knows Howl's Moving Castle. Sophie has the great misfortune of being the eldest of 3 daughters, destined to fail miserably should she ever leave home to seek her fate. But when she unwittingly attracts the ire of the Witch of the Waste, Sophie finds herself under a horrid spell that transforms her into an old lady. Her only chance at breaking it lies in the ever-moving castle in the hills, the Wizard Howl's castle. To untangle the enchantment, Sophie must handle the heartless Howl, strike a bargain with the fire demon, and meet the Witch of the Waste head-on. Along the way, she discovers that there's far more to Howl and herself than first meets the eye. So a lot of people really like Howl's Moving Castle because of the romance between Howl and Sophie. I do as well. I really like the world building. I like the fire demon, who we all know to be Calcifer. I will definitely say Howl is very different in the book than he is in the film. A little bit of his personality comes across in the film, but he's more like romantic and charming in the Ghibli movie. And in the book, he's definitely a drama queen. He's a drama queen, he's messy, he's throws temper tantrums a lot. He's very childlike almost. The book definitely did not measure up to the Ghibli movie. I would probably give it another read, but for now I'm gonna just put it in the good tier. Next we have the Strange the Dreamer series by Laini Taylor. It's been a while since I've read this book. I know there's 2 books out, Strange the Dreamer and Muse of Nightmares is the sequel. I've only read Strange the Dreamer. I'm gonna read the summary for you because it has been a while. This was one that I read in high school. The dream chooses the dreamer, not the other way around. And Laszlo Strange, war orphan and junior librarian, has always feared that his dream chose poorly. Since he was 5 years old, he's been obsessed with the mythic lost city of Weep, but it would take someone bolder than he to cross half the world in search of it. Then a stunning opportunity presents itself in the person of a hero called the Godslayer and a band of legendary warriors, and he has to seize his chance or lose his dream forever. What happened in Weep 200 years ago to cut it off from the rest of the world? What exactly did the Godslayer slay that went by the name of God? The answers await in Weep, but so do more mysteries, including the blue-skinned goddess who appears in Laszlo's dreams. This is definitely a book that is about stories, I would say. Laszlo spends a lot of time in the library and he's looking for this lost world, and part of where he's looking is in these books. So if you like reading books about books, this might be one for you. It definitely wasn't a favorite of mine. Also, Laini Taylor's writing is a little bit too flowery for my personal taste. I think I rated this one, I rated this one 3 stars. We'll put this in the good tier. Next, we have another Laini Taylor series. This is Daughter of Smoke and Bone. This one I actually rated much higher. I rated 5 stars. Around the world, black handprints are appearing on doorways, scorched there by winged strangers who have crept through a slit in the sky. In a dark and dusty shop, a devil's supply of human teeth grows dangerously low. And in the tangled lanes of Prague, a young art student is about to be caught up in a brutal otherworldly war. Meet Karou. She fills her sketchbooks with monsters that may or may not be real. She's prone to disappearing on mysterious errands. She speaks many languages, not all of them human, and her bright blue hair actually grows out of her head that color. Who is she? That is the question that haunts her, and she's about to find out. When beautiful haunted Akiva fixes fiery eyes on her in an alley in Marrakesh, the result is blood and starlight, secrets unveiled, and a star-crossed love whose roots drink deep of a violent past. But will Karou live to regret learning the truth about herself? So this is a very standard fantasy, urban fantasy. There are interesting creatures, there are devils and angels, but yeah, just the writing was so flowery and something about the protagonist did not really stick out to me. I did rate it 5 stars though, so maybe it deserves a reread. I'm gonna put it in the good tier. Next, we have the Nevermore series by Kelly Cray. This is one of my favorite series of all time. This is Nevermore, Enshadowed, and Oblivion. This is definitely a series that I did not expect to love as much as I do. It's one that I just picked up at the library in high school, but it's literally unforgettable. Everything about it is seared into my brain. I almost want to put this one in God tier, and I feel like I should, but let me read the premise of this one to you. This is very much a Poe-inspired story, and if you like Grumpy and Sunshine couple vibes, this is definitely that. It's actually like a goth guy and a cheerleader girl, so they are like polar opposite. The books are incredibly well written too. Let me read this to you. Cheerleader Isabel Landley is horrified when she is paired with Varen Nethers for an English project, which is due, so unfair, on the day of the rival game. Cold and aloof, sardonic and sharp-tongued, Varen makes it clear he'd rather not have anything to do with her either. But when Isabel discovers strange writing in his journal, she can't help but give this enigmatic boy with the piercing eyes another look. Soon, Isabel finds herself making excuses to be with Varen. Steadily pulled away from her friends and her possessive boyfriend, Isabel ventures deeper and deeper into the dream world Varen has created through the pages of his notebook, a realm where the terrifying stories of Edgar Allan Poe come to life. As her world begins to unravel around her, Isabel discovers that dreams, like words, hold more power than she ever imagined, and that the most frightening realities are those of the mind. Now she must find a way to reach Varen before he is consumed by the shadows of his own nightmares. Varen, as all goth boys are, is a very tortured soul, and it takes Isabelle to really see that. So yeah, this is a great series. It's nothing compares to it. I've never read another fantasy that hits the same way that this one does. I really want to put it in God tier, and you know what? I think I'm just going to. And I know nobody's probably heard of this, but it deserves to be there. So, next up we have Percy Jackson and the Olympians by Rick Riordan. And I know this is a lot of people's favorite series. And I really loved this one as well when I read it in middle school. I actually only read the first two books, The Lightning Thief and The Sea of Monsters. I never got around to reading the others or even the second series. I don't feel like I need to give a summary for Percy Jackson. I think everybody knows what it is and who he is. Lots of other books in fantasy have tried to replicate it, and I don't think anyone can. I don't know if I can put it in God tier. I do want to put it in great tier. I do plan to reread it, at least the first book, at some point. It's just so nostalgic and immersive and fun and lighthearted and just everything that a fantasy should be. And I don't read a lot of lighthearted fantasies anymore. I think it would be a refreshing reread. Next we have the Graceling series by Kristen Cashore. There's currently 4 books in this series: Graceling, Fire, Bitterblue, and Winterkeep. Fire is actually set in the same universe as Graceling, but it's not technically a sequel, so you can read that one first if you prefer. It follows different protagonists. Graceling is an incredible book, one of my favorite books of all time, and it's a pretty standard fantasy in terms of the plot and the royal intrigue and the powers the characters have. But there's just something about the story that's so character driven, especially the characters Katsa, who's the main character, and then Poe, her love interest, who are my 2 favorites. So I am going to read the summary for this one. Katsa has been able to kill a man with her bare hands since she was 8. She's a Graceling, one of the rare people in her land born with an extreme skill. As niece of the king, she should be able to live a life of privilege, but graced as she is with killing, she is forced to work as the king's thug. She never expects to fall in love with beautiful Prince Poe. She never expects to learn the truth behind her grace, or the terrible secret that lies hidden far away, a secret that could destroy all 7 kingdoms with words alone.
Hey everyone, it's Peyton. I just wanted to pop in with a quick voiceover and say that my phone ran out of storage at this point, so I no longer have any video recording left, but luckily I did record audio, so I can review these last 2 book series for you. Also, as I was editing, I was going through my Goodreads. I did miss a few series, nothing major, nothing that I really loved. They probably would have been mostly good tier or okay / lukewarm tier books, but one of those was Caraval. At least on my Bookstagram I've talked about Caraval before, but that would probably be a not for me tier book. There were a couple other one-off books that I forgot to mention, but like I said, nothing major. Everything was covered here, so let's get through these last 2 series.
So I'm gonna put this one, should it go God tier or should it go great tier? Because I'm rating each of these as a series, and I will say that Bitterblue and especially Winterkeep for me took a dive in quality. Winterkeep, the 4th book, was written years and years and years after Bitterblue was published, and it just, returning to the world didn't feel the same, and it felt a little bit forced to me. So because there was that dip in quality, I'm going to rate it great instead of God. On to the last book, and I feel like this is a really, really good one to close on. This is the Shadow and Bone series by Leigh Bardugo. I've already talked about Six of Crows and Ninth House. I love Shadow and Bone. I know some people prefer Six of Crows to the Shadow and Bone series, but I always think that we have to keep in mind that Shadow and Bone was Leigh Bardugo's debut novel, so she was still really discovering her writing style when she published this first book, and I think for being a first book, it was truly incredible and it showed her potential. I do think her writing improved a lot during Six of Crows, but there's something about Shadow and Bone and just the original introduction of the Grishaverse that is so gorgeous and memorable and immersive. So I'm gonna have to put this one in God tier for sure. It's gonna go there for me. So the Shadow and Bone series is Shadow and Bone, Siege and Storm, and Ruin and Rising. And then of course we have the Six of Crows series, which kind of integrates with that later. And then we also have King of Scars and Rule of Wolves. I am going to read the summary of this one to you. Surrounded by enemies, the once great nation of Ravka has been torn in two by the Shadowfold, a swath of near impenetrable darkness crawling with monsters who feast on human flesh. Now its fate may rest on the shoulders of one lonely refugee. Alina Starkov has never been good at anything, but when her regiment is attacked on the fold and her best friend is brutally injured, Alina reveals a dormant power that saves his life, a power that could be the key to setting her war-ravaged country free. Wrenched from everything she knows, Alina is whisked away to the royal court to be trained as a member of the Grisha, the magical elite led by the mysterious Darkling. Yet nothing in this lavish world is what it seems. With darkness looming and an entire kingdom depending on her untamed power, Alina will have to confront the secrets of the Grisha and the secrets of her heart. This is an incredible series, as I said. Leigh Bardugo is really a fantasy master. She's a master of world building. Each of the countries in the Grishaverse is so unique. He's also a master of plot twists. So if you really like plot twists, there's definitely a lot. I really find Alina's relationship with the Darkling fascinating. Definitely not healthy, but fascinating. I love everything about this series, and it's fantastic, so you should read it. That is it. This is what my final tier list looks like. We have 7 books in God tier. I think that's pretty good. I definitely put the most books in great tier and good tier.
Okay, everyone, that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to write in the comments down below whether you agree or disagree with my tier rankings. Also, let me know if you'd like to see more tier ranking videos, if you'd want me to rank characters or like sci-fi or Japanese literature or anything like that. Let me know. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video. Thank you.